So I have the new races right here, and what I'm going to do is those have been in the freezer for a while, so hopefully they have shrunk just a little bit. I'm going to use this Harbor Freight heat gun to heat around where the cups go, and I'm going to attempt to put those in with a small drop of the Loctite that you can see up there to help retain those in there. If I have any problems with getting the cup in, what I'm going to do is use the old cup up against it and tap it gently, work around it with a hammer, and see if I can get that to go in there. So let me start with just heating it up. All right, so I'm back here and I'm ready to attempt to install the first cup. That feels like it went in pretty good. Let's check the other side. See if you can see in there. Looks like it's all the way squared up. What I'm gonna do is grab the other old cup. So I grabbed the old cup and I held it up against the new cup and kind of just gently tapped around it with this, soft hammer. And I was able to get a little bit of more movement, and I took my thumbs and pushing it, and it snapped into the final position. So you can see a little gap too if you look closely, like right up in here. That's where the oil is able to come down and get into the bearing. And when we put the, I call them seals, those metal caps on each side, we need to make sure that there's holes on those to line up so that the oil can get down through, and we'll check on that in a minute. Okay, we're now on the opposite side, and I have a little bit of the green Loctite on the cup, and I'm gonna go in and put this one in. And you might notice that I'm leaving no Loctite on the top of it where the oil will be able to come down through. Let's hope this one goes as easy as the last one. Okay, I'm gonna have to put the camera down and use the same trick with the soft hammer. I worked a way around it, and I now have this one seated in place. Okay, here's what you need to know about what I'm calling the seals or the caps. So the two larger diameter ones are the outers, and they each have a notch in them. Hopefully you kind of paid attention when you were taking yours apart, but maybe you forgot. So the outer has the notch because when you put it in, it has space, as I mentioned earlier, for the oil to come down through here and get into the bearing itself. The inners are the smaller diameter IDs, and the larger of the smalls goes at the chuck end. And you can't really mess this up too bad because if you notice, the ODs are different. So if you try to put this on the outside, you're just gonna have way too much room, okay? So what you do is the outer, what I'm calling the outer ones, the larger diameter outer ones with the notch that go there and there, those are installed at the end, after the spindle is in place. Otherwise, if you think about it, you won't be able to get your bearing in there because the cover is larger than the roller bearing itself. So once all the bearings are in place, everything's in here in the center, and it's all good, then you can put the outer seals or caps on. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna start placing the inners where they belong with just a dab of the Loctite on these as well, because I remember that one of them came out a little bit too easy for my liking. And that one is in. I'm going to try to show you a little bit of how I did it. I put two fingers inside the seal, and I try to just line it up, kind of work its way in a little bit, but it's hard. Unfortunately, without someone else here to help film, I have to keep cutting it out. But come around the front of the spindle and kind of wrap your hands around and just kind of pull with your fingers and it will pop in. And with this one, I did have to tap around it a little bit more aggressively with the soft hammer, but it also is in. All right, so we're ready now with the seals in place. We can start feeding the spindle through. Now, I have pre-oiled the bearing a little bit and the cup so that there's some lubrication there. Now, what you have to do is, as you're feeding the spindle in, you have to start putting on everything as you go, because that's the only way you can do it. So we're gonna put the bowl gear on, then we're gonna put the pulleys on and the belt on, and then lastly there's like a little spacer right here that we gotta put on, this little collar. So I'm gonna start going through with the bowl gear. And the thing is, as you're doing this, you don't want to be dinging the cup, you don't want to be putting Mars on your spindle, you don't want to be hurting it, so you got to be careful. And I would recommend using a little bit of oil on everything as it goes together. Matter of fact, I'm going to put a little bit extra on the bowl gear right now. All right, so we're feeding it through, and I'm going to put the bowl gear on. Just kind of balance that, and then I'm going to put the pulley on. And it's kind of tricky to get them all to line up, but you just have to be patient and go gently so you're not, like I said, damaging anything as you go. And we got to get the belt on. So the hardest part to me is you need to get the woodruff key down in there. So you have to have the slot for the keyway lined up with the bowl gear and the woodruff key and the spindle all lined up. And then you kind of have to reach in here. I use a little brass punch and a soft hammer and just kind of tap this down in gently. Okay, and it looks like the key has gone in and we're gonna be okay. Okay, so with everything all back together for the most part, the key is in, everything here, the belt, haven't forgotten anything. We are now ready to put the rear bearing in. And to do this, I just keep this in the center position. And you can see it just barely gives you enough space to get the bearing on. And sometimes I gotta lean a little bit on the front of the spindle just to give that little extra bit of clearance. So got it on there, and what I'm doing right now is one last inspection before this goes in, making sure that it is clean. I want everything to be very, very clean, lightly oiled, but not so much oil that you're getting dust and collecting stuff in there. Just make sure it's clean. And what I'm gonna probably have to do is I'm gonna get either the old bearing or a spacer or something I can put on here off camera because I can't film and do it. And I'm just gonna gently tap, work my way around, and gently get this bearing in there. Now you can see that I've put on the flange, the gear, and then basically the nut with the little set screw on it. But we're not finished, because what I did was I used this to tighten up enough to kind of draw everything back into place. And one thing you could do if you're trying to check, and you can barely see down inside the hole there for the set screw, you can see the mark where this was on the spindle before. So look for little clues like that where you can kind of, you know, judge, hey, is this all going back to about the same location that it was before? Because it's hard to tell with everything cleaned up. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take everything back off on the end and put the cap, install the outer caps, and then put this all back on, and we're gonna tighten it like the book says, and then I gotta reassemble the rest of the lathe to run it for about 20 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer, to allow everything to come up to temperature and then do a final tension on it. But while we are here, I wanna show you how the cup system works, the oiler system. And this is so much better than what they had with those grease fittings, guys. I'm gonna squeeze some oil in, and you're gonna watch, it's really gonna flood right out. You see that? So you can imagine if your lathe was running, the oil is just pouring all over that bearing. That's what the lubrication is supposed to be on this, not packed tight full of moly EP grease or something like that. And make sure that, I think it's a good idea before you assemble it, you know, with the final torque and everything, just to hand spin it and just put the oil right to it. Get some good lubrication in there. So the rear cover is on, and I'm just going to tap it in gently, working my way around it. And that was making sure that the cutout at the top was there for the oil. Went ahead and did the same procedure to the front. And I'm back here again, just putting the woodruff key back in. Got the flange on. Put the gear on. And I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down. Not super tight, but fairly snug. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back here, just check that alignment again, just like I showed you before. Check it for the final time, because this stuff is all still not put down with set screws and everything. And then we're gonna come in and we're gonna put down all the set screws when we know that it's lined up to where it was before. And we're gonna be done with the reassembly, and we'll be ready to put the counter shaft back on, get everything all in place, and then trial run it. Now, I'm not gonna show in this video putting on the counter shaft and the motor and all that stuff, but when it's all on, I'll do the initial startup and then the final tension with you guys.